for the hardest-hitting show in talk radio. The true progressive voice since 2012. This is Southpaws.
And welcome to Southpaws on the Pacifica Radio Network. We are the leaders of the revolution. My name is Darren Gibson, and I'm your co-host.
And my name is Jack Prince, your fellow co-host.
Well, Jack, we've got a lot of coronavirus stuff to talk about. Michigan made national news, and for that matter, international news this week. Not for the reasons that we hoped they would be. Unfortunately, they were for the wrong reasons, and we'll get into that in just a minute. But before we do, a couple of reminders that you can follow us on social media by going to facebook.com/Southpaws Radio Show. You can follow us on Twitter at Southpaws Radio. You can become a patron of the show by going to patreon.com/Southpaws Radio. You can listen to the show anytime you like at Spreaker.com. Do a search for Southpaws there. We're also at the iTunes Store. Do a search for Southpaws under podcast. Once you've found our logo, you've found us. And, of course, all of our podcasts go directly to our Facebook, Twitter, and our YouTube channel. So go to youtube.com and do a search for Southpaws Radio there. You can also find us on great Pacifica stations, including KCEI-FM in Taos, New Mexico, KZGM in Kabul, Missouri, and Global Community Radio Channel 1. We're on every Saturday night at 11 p.m. Make sure you check us out there. Well, the conservatives held a Trump rally on Wednesday of this week in Lansing. The premise was to protest Governor Gretchen Whitmer's executive orders. Now, whether or not that was their original intent, I don't know, but it turned into a Trump rally. From what I saw, a video from the news wires.
Yeah, it sure did. Just like his pressers daily are no more than Trump rallies.
Mm-hmm.
And the issue of the coronavirus was completely negated because they broke every law, every mandate that Whitmer had put out. Standing in front of the Capitol, handing out candy to children, no face masks, no 6-foot spacing. I would have thought if the police were awake that day, at noon, that they would go and break that up, citing the very dictates that Whitmer had put in place.
Of course.
But no, we didn't see it.
No, instead we saw traffic jams around downtown Lansing. We saw ambulances that couldn't get into Sparrow Hospital, which is a level 1 trauma center in Lansing. That's not too far from the Capitol.
Yeah, you let these fools get their way, they'll get it more. They'll just get stronger.
Exactly. This is why I'm going to be controversial, probably going to lose some listeners on this. I don't care. It's time for Governor Whitmer to call out the National Guard to prevent this from happening again. Period.
But that doesn't seem extreme when we consider that the outcome is life and death of Michigan citizens.
Exactly. Oh, but she's trampling on my rights. Well, guess what? You're not going to be able to exercise your rights if you're 6 feet under the ground or if your ashes are in an urn. There's the facts, folks. There it is.
The little viruses floating around the Capitol area were laughing their ass off at these idiots. not to stretch a metaphor, but they said, this is the kind of fool's picnic we excel in.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you think about these guys with their AK-47s, this little tiny piece of floating debris that they perpetuated down there, doesn't see any of their bravado, doesn't care how many machine guns they got strapped to their fat bellies.
Mm-hmm.
And there will be victims. They're in that crowd.
Oh,
and
exactly.
So be it. If that happens to them, I'm not going to lose any sleep. But it's the guy that they stopped and talked with on their way home to get some gas, or it's the relative who they call a tree hugger back home that has to go over and pick up some groceries from them, and they're the innocent bystanders that these fools will infect.
Exactly. And for those of you that think, oh, this is unprecedented, well, no, it isn't. All you got to do is go back in history 100 years to what was called the Spanish flu pandemic. It was the wrong name. It didn't come from Spain. It was H1N1 strain of flu that had never been seen in people before in 1918 and through 1920 when we had the pandemic over here. I didn't know this until yesterday. Did you know that Michigan State Police back in early 1919 blocked off Leelanau County from Grand Traverse County? There was
I did not know that.
There was a blockade set up. If you were a Grand Traverse County resident, you were not allowed into Leelanau County unless you were going to quarantine for 4 days under strict order and police power. There it is, folks. This is not unprecedented. We've been through this before.
I've seen pictures of people with their masks on with the warning that without the mask that they would be arrested.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't see anybody go to the Capitol and claim we want our convenience back. We want our freedom.
Yeah, free to be dumb.
And did you know, Darren, speaking of history, the same epoch of time, 1918, there was a war effort rally in, I believe it was Philadelphia, New York. And some people, there were some warning voices that it was too premature, it was too early because the epidemic had not subsided enough. But nonetheless, 200,000 people gathered in the streets. Within 24 hours, every hospital was filled. 4,500 people were infected just from that gathering. And the whole rally cost people their lives. And they were sure it was safe at that time as we sit in the shadow of Trump's idiocy talking about reopening. So there's a lot to be learned from the history, not just here in our state, but nationwide. And one of the lessons was that they jumped the gun. They were too optimistic.
Mm-hmm.
And that was probably even more conservative back then. I mean, they are nowhere near as wildly. Well, we have Dr. Oz, we got Dr. Phil talking about letting that 2-3% die. Don't worry about it. The actions taken in 1918, as you've pointed out, were stringent and they were obeyed. Mm-hmm. And I don't see any history that indicates there was a pushback, that anybody gathered in any capital saying, hey, this is too stringent and this is too severe. We want to have the right to be able to go to our neighbor and we want the right to go to church. I didn't see that pushback. What I did see was the rally in, I believe it's Philadelphia. I read about it yesterday, that had a 250,000 people and within hours filled the hospitals with the spread of the virus.
Yeah. It might have been.
What you have to understand is these idiots don't understand is that the number one defense is to not gather, not in groups of 3, not in groups of 300, not in any grouping. That is the way you thwart this, short of a vaccination, which we're months away from.
Exactly.
Maybe years.
Possibly. And the thing was, what you were talking about in Philadelphia, New York, that was the armistice. That was the end of World War I. And you know that the pandemic caused more American deaths than World War I?
Mm-hmm.
That's a fact, folks. You need to look it up. You need to learn from your history. George Santayana said, those who don't learn from history are doomed to repeat it, paraphrasing. But I tell you what.
Got to be able to read.
Yeah.
That's the problem.
Well, we're going to do the reading for you, folks. For those of you that can't, I've got this. This is Matthew Brown writing a fact check for USA Today. The claim, Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer banned the sale of American flags in the state. Differences in stay-at-home orders issued by state and local officials create conditions for misinformation to spread. On April 13th, conservative blogger Pamela Geller claimed on her website that Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer, a Democrat, had banned the sale of American flags in the state. The post references a tweet that claims to show a photo of a set of American flags cordoned off by caution tape in a Michigan Costco. Geller told USA Today, quote, "This tweet shows a caution tape in front of an American flag sale display," end of quote. The claim appears to be part of a larger set of allegations surrounding Whitmer's stay-at-home order that have circulated online. Other claims state that Whitmer banned the sale of baby car seats, seeds, gardening tools, and other supplies. Ben Domenichek, co-founder of the conservative magazine The Federalist, tweeted this, quote, I didn't believe this at first, but Whitmer's order does indeed require stores to shut down their gardening and planting sections. End of quote. Senate Majority Leader Mike Shirkey, Republican, who, by the way, owns a business in Jackson, tweeted this, quote, in Michigan today, you can buy weed, but not seeds. End of quote. Well, USA Today ruled false. Michigan has not banned the sale of American flags in the state. While the governor is now requiring that large stores cut off some sections of their store concerning gardening and home improvement, these supplies can still be bought online. We rate this claim false because it is not supported by our research. As a matter of fact, we'll expand on that a little bit. The ruling about closing off gardening centers applies to big box stores of a size of 50,000 square feet or larger, because those are the stores that people are going to get their groceries, to get their medicine.
Right. Yeah.
You know, I've got friends. I got a friend that works for Meijer. I'm not going to mention this person's name or which store they work at, but this person told me that there have been people that have been going in, just wandering around shopping like it's just any other day instead of going to get what they needed and get out of the store. No, this is why the governor had to issue that order.
Yeah, you have a child mentality. You got to take them by the hand.
Mm-hmm. And that's pretty much what they are. They're little children. They're spoiled little conservative children that need a spanking and a diaper change.
And like little children, they get a new rifle under the Christmas tree. They love to parade around the house with that gun.
Mm-hmm.
And that's before they've even reached puberty. Then it just accelerates after that, because that is an extension of their manhood.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
They didn't excel in their life at any time, most of them. Most of them didn't read. They didn't learn and mature. So they still are children. That's not hyperbole. The sense that they have equal rights is a psychological necessity, because they haven't felt equal all of their life. And now Trump has given them, this is not exaggeration, a chance to step out of their failing past and put them on a pedestal that says, yeah, you guys have been right all along. Those homespun values back there, God, guns, the pickup truck, all of that, that's life. You guys got the real intellectual capacity, which is to keep it real simple and keep it real American, and they suddenly feel like they're out of their failed past. As far as their manhood, they got a gun. And I'm talking manhood, I'm talking about their actual male appendage.
Yep.
They got an AK-47, they got whatever it takes. It's been proven it is a substitute for their male deficiencies. And they also have now equal rights with wealthy, with intelligence, with college graduates.
Mm-hmm. This
is the dawn. And now people are realizing that they've got the pull. You got 4 sheriffs in Michigan who said they will not enforce. They will not enforce the protective mandates of the governor.
Mm-hmm.
And that's booming all over the United States. It's a rebellion of the stupid.
It is. And the irony is that one of the counties involved is Leelanau County, which we told you at the beginning of the show 100 years ago was cordoned off by the state police armed with guns, saying you can't come into this county until this flu epidemic is over.
And they did it.
Yep.
They didn't sneak around through the trees.
Yep. I want to get to this article since we're talking about the protest in Michigan on Wednesday. This is by Charles P. Pierce, writing for Esquire magazine. On Wednesday, there was a protest in Michigan against Governor Gretchen Whitmer's stay-at-home order. It had a spiffy name, Operation Gridlock, and it had a spiffy display of, among other banners, the Confederate battle flag. The protest represented tens of actual voters whom Whitmer undoubtedly has lost. But what that protest represents is not half as funny as this bunch of angry shut-ins made it look on Wednesday. Here's what the Daily Beast wrote about it. The tension has prompted Republican lawmakers and supporters of the president to publicly call for Americans to defy their local orders, claiming they infringe on constitutional rights. On Monday, Richard Grinnell, acting director of the Office of National Intelligence and the U.S. ambassador to Germany, posted a photo of the Bill of Rights on Instagram with this title, "Signed permission slip to leave your house." Below the post in the caption, Grinnell wrote, "Love this." A reporter tweeted the post after its publishing saying this, quote, "Seems the top U.S. intelligence chief, acting director, national intelligence, Richard Grinnell, isn't a fan of the stay-at-home orders." End of quote. Grinnell responded this, quote, "Seems Grinnell is a fan of the Constitution to me." End of quote. The acting director of the Office of National Intelligence is encouraging citizens to break local laws, endangering themselves and others in the middle of a pandemic. Of all the screwy moments that we have experienced since the founding of Camp Run Amok, this is going to rank very close to the top. And it is not going to be a surprise to anyone if another AstroTurf movement similar to the Tea Party rises, especially if the president opens up the country at the beginning of May. Here's what else was written by the Daily Beast. Republican operatives say the burgeoning movement against coronavirus restrictions could end up stressing an already heavily stressed body politic even further, with conservative activists challenging their governors in increasingly dramatic fashion. Former Representative Jack Kingston, Republican of Georgia, who is a close White House ally, said he felt the country was nearing a tipping point. He wrote this, quote, "I think it could be a combination of politics, misinformation, economic hardship, emotion, anxiety, and well-intentioned civil disobedience. The liquor stores and dispensaries are open, but I can't buy a gun." End of quote. Well, I'm going to stop right there for a quick minute. There's your priorities, folks. There is your conservative, Republican, pablum-puking priorities. Guns and ammo.
Mm-hmm.
We don't want to save lives. We want to take lives. And I'm not being hyperbolic here. Let me continue.
Yeah, no,
go ahead.
There's never been a clear divide. There's never been the absolute contrast made any clearer than right now. What it is, as you just said, that motivates that conservative mind is to harm other people, is to threaten other people. They were the little dukes. You remember back in grade school? You remember those guys? You know, they just picked on people, had the chip on their shoulder constantly, took a reactionary stance in every event, and that's still their MO today.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what school up north there you went, if you had that clientele, but in every class situation I taught for 30 years, you could pick them. I didn't really discriminate against them, but I could have told you how they would vote in 6 more years from high school. Or not even that, some, 2 or 3 more years.
Mm-hmm.
It was obvious. It was in them. It was part of their DNA. You look at the faces of the people down there in Lansing, they do not have empathy for anybody else.
No, they're
the
selfish.
President, their leader, has none. He has not shown any in all these months of the self-aggrandizement appearances. I've never seen him have a heartfelt, demonstrated compassion for the 30,000 or whoever. Never. Not once. You can't. It's not there.
No.
It's not in their being.
He's a narcissist. What do you expect? I tell you. Let me continue this real quick here. This is less AstroTurf than it is a spreading poisonous kudzu fed by the toxic sludge that has flowed under the conservative movement for decades. The Daily Beast continues with this. Ashley Smith said, quote, "When it's my time to go, God's going to call me home. I think that to live is inherently to take risks. I'm not concerned about this virus any more than I am about the flu." End of quote. Smith supports Trump's recent insinuation that he may forcibly reopen states whose governors continue to support stay-at-home orders, though it's not clear that Trump actually has the power to do any such thing. She continues, quote, "We are not promised a pathogen-free existence. We do not have a constitutional right to not get a virus." End of quote. Esquire.
Well, first of all, it is not constitutionally permissible for the president to tell these states what to do for their medical concerns.
That's actually the next sentence in the Esquire article. The president does not have that power. Go ahead, Jack.
Well, what should worry people is the president running around extending himself and trying to grab power over this the tragedy. And the 10th Amendment, I think it is, I don't have it written down, that makes it very clear. And for him not to have known that, just to spout that out, is more egregious even than some of the aspects of the virus. What we really have is, as Trump has said, there's going to be consequences to this economically. There's going to be ramifications if we physically survive. But that's not the priority you have to have. First of all, you care about saving lives. And that doesn't mean that you, like Dr. Phil, or Dr. Oz, or a Republican this last week who said that, 2, 3, 4% is something we can endure.
Mm-hmm.
The first necessity is to save people's lives. Don't worry about your tomato plant getting a slow start. Don't worry that you haven't had a chance to play euchre with the other rednecks in the double wide down the street for 2 weeks. You have to save people's lives, and those who are human are involved in that effort. You should see and read some of the articles. I can't read and speak where I'm at right now at the same time because it hurts my phone. But I read an article immediately registered by one of the medical technicians there at Sparrow Hospital within hours. I think he went into the hospital and got his phone and put it out. How their actions wasn't just a slap in the face. It was an endangerment.
Yeah, this was the video that was posted to social media.
I don't know about you, but, I've been to a few protests. I was always told if you stepped onto the public street, or any street for that matter, you could be arrested for obstructing traffic. I don't mean 500 pickup trucks. I mean, if I had set my foot down, the police were watching and would have arrested me immediately. I was in the May Day parade here, I think it was just a year ago, for immigrant rights. And the police, universally, up and down the street, step on that street, step on that, I think the street we were on at the time was Division Street, you'll be arrested for obstructing traffic. And yet they can sit there and obstruct in front of a hospital without any ramifications.
Well,
how easy would it have been for a state policeman to walk up and give the guy a citation for obstructing traffic?
Jack, how many times have we said, how many times has the World Socialist website said, how many times has Jeff Smith at Grid said that the police protect the status quo? Right there's your evidence. Yeah.
Well, speaking of Jeff Smith, if I'm not mistaken, he was arrested right here in this city, sitting in a street with two other people, trying to stop the traffic for 30 seconds, and was immediately arrested. His butt had just hit the pavement, and he was arrested.
I believe a former guest on our show has also been arrested in that same protest, Katie Steele-Baroni, who filled in for you one week about a year or so ago.
Well, I was arrested, not in that protest, but years ago when Bush came to town, and we tried to block an intersection, started to stop his motorcade.
Well, there was a LGBTQ protest, one of the parades or whatever last year, that two of our former colleagues who were former co-hosts of our now former sister show Women Libs Radio, Raina Cook and Lucy Diamond, were both arrested for impeding traffic.
Yeah. Oh, and anytime there was any insinuation of a danger, a threat of danger even, that protest, I say not that specific one, but any protest that I've ever seen, if the police could say, well, you're causing a danger here, it was over. It was done. Immediately done.
Yep. I want to finish this article real quick here. Last paragraph. The president does not have that power, except in the fevered brain of people like Ms. Smith, who has listened to all the right radio programs, visits all the right websites, and reads all the right books. And by right, they mean right wing. Therefore, she knows that we do not have a constitutional right not to get a virus, but apparently she has a constitutional right to spread one. This nonsense that's coming, and it's going to be encouraged by the national government, and the author of the article, Charles Pierce, does not know how we avoid it. I can tell you how. You get the governors to get the National Guard out and squash these. Sorry, it's an illegal protest. We're in an emergency.
You stand in front of those 10, 11-year-old kids who were down here at the Capitol and had their daddy a $500 citation, a 90-day misdemeanor.
Mm-hmm.
Hand it to them. Hand them out like gifts. Take a stand and support to the authority of the state. That person was elected. They're given that right to take these stands. It's all spelled out legally.
Mm-hmm.
And teach the kids a civic lesson. So you're not going to stand here and endanger other citizens' lives. We didn't get that. And that worries me.
Mm-hmm.
Because I'm afraid of where this will end up. You got the virus, which is bad enough, and now you got another virus called extreme conservatism driven by stupidity. You want to check the medical MO on how that virus works? You take a microscope and you look in your ear, and you see empty caverns laced with all kinds of fundamental Christian BS, conservative agenda BS, extreme attention to bravado, male superiority, which is also called misogyny.
Mm-hmm.
That's what's draped inside that empty cavern.
Yeah.
It's not a little round thing with spikes on it, like a corona, like a crown.
No.
It's a mind that's as dangerous. It's just as dangerous as the virus, and my God, Darren, now they've combined. Now we have both of them to fight.
We certainly
Little
do.
tiny virus and big four-wheel trucks with a Confederate flag on the back. They're threatening our very existence.
Yeah, compare the size of the two things that are a danger to us. The size of a typical coronavirus is 120 nanometers. That's 120 billionths of a meter. It's minuscule. Then you've got the conservative assholes in their 2-ton pickup trucks. And for that matter, you got the businesses that support all this as well, which we're going to get to eventually. But the number of business people that supported this, there's an excavator. I'll mention their name. Dean Excavating in St. Lake, Michigan, sent 21 trucks as part of a 40-vehicle convoy to Lansing. People should boycott Dean Excavating, in my opinion.
There's a whole list out on Facebook of the businesses.
Asinine. Asinine. Dumb. Stupid. Idiotic. They're morons. And I tell you what, it's not just in Michigan. We've got this story. You sent this to me. This is from the Columbus Dispatch. This is Anna Staver and Cole Behrens writing on April 13th, and it was updated April 14th. A growing chorus of Ohio's Republican lawmakers want their governor, Mike DeWine, to set a date for the first phases of reopening businesses, schools, and public places. Senator Andrew Brenner, Republican of Delaware, Ohio, wrote this in a Facebook post. Quote, "We need to get the economy open, even if that means social distancing of some sort for months to come. We can't stay like this much longer, and the hundreds of thousands of Ohioans who've lost their jobs or the thousands of small business owners can't keep doing this either, or their lives will be irreparably destroyed." End of quote. Let me just stop there and ask this Representative Brenner, what about those people that are sitting in a hospital attached to a ventilator and their lives are destroyed? What about them? What about their survivors when they pass and they can't say goodbye to them in person? They have to do it over social media or over FaceTime or over Skype. Where's the sympathy for those folks? There is none. You won't find them. You know why? Because they don't have money. They don't have power. Period. This is absolutely f***ing ridiculous, Jack. F***ing ridiculous.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
And I'm angry. I am pissed off, and I have the right to be pissed off. You want pissed? Yeah. You'll get it this episode. I don't care if I lose listeners. I don't care if I lose stations at this point. You're going to get the truth from me, and it's going to be brutal. It's going to be as brutal as these dumb assholes were in Lansing on Wednesday.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, we have lots of issues. Things that nauseated me this week, Bernie endorsing Biden, I could go on and on and on. They all pale in comparison to the demonstration and its ramifications that took place right here. I have friends across the nation, Arizona, you name it, high school, college friends saying, what the hell is going on in Michigan? It's bad here in Arizona, but we don't have thousands of people parading and displaying that kind of objective. Nothing like it. I mean, seriously, why is it that we lead the nation with this kind of display?
Well,
can we blame it all on Betsy or on the losses?
We absolutely can, because I was just told earlier this week that there were radio ads that were pushing this protest this past Wednesday. Come down to Lansing and join the protest over Gretchen Whitmer's
that were paid for by the DeVosses. I'm being somewhat facetious when I say that, but I think it's also the layers and decades of propaganda BS that has fallen on this state.
Jeff Smith,
really, we're a dark place.
Jeff Smith has a great article for Grid where he talks about the money that the DeVosses have donated to these conservative causes. Some of them they've started themselves that push this, that support this, that's by advertising for this. Yes, we can blame them directly. Look at the 990s, folks. They're available. It's public record. All you got to do is look for them and get them. You'll be shocked.
Derek, can I put a little different perspective? I want to go to some idiots that really have an ear on Fox, but also an American audience. Dr. Phil and Dr. Oz.
Mm-hmm.
You're entertainment doctors.
Yeah, exactly.
Oz this week, okay, and I'm not reading from an article. My phone is right to my head, but I just wrote this down briefly. This week, Oz sparked outrage when he advocated for reopening schools amid the pandemic, saying it would result in only 2 to 3% more deaths.
Mm-hmm.
This was on Hannity's show, where Oz called it a very appetizing opportunity to help U.S. get its mojo back. Oz claimed he got the information from a nice piece from the Lancelot, claiming school reopening would only cost us 2 to 3%, and then added any life that is lost might be a worthy trade-off. That number would translate into hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of children, teachers, custodians, school officials, etc. It's one thing to say save the economy. That's empty enough. That is greedy enough to disgust you. But when you actually are considering, I'm an ex-educator, putting kids into death's harm's way and writing off 3% as a way to increase our mojo, and these are doctors, Darren. It's unbelievable. They're not alone. There's not just doctors. You got Rubio down in Florida suggesting that, the sacrifice now is necessary to save our economy. And then right here in Michigan, 3,000 to 5,000 people parade right out in the open with their open faces Wednesday with guns tied to their chest. Do you know how dark ages that looks? Can you imagine running around and killing straw sacrifices, throwing them on the fire to get rid of the bubonic plague? I mean, I don't know that they did that, but they certainly could have, because they had darkened minds. And I see the same idiots with guns strapped to their back running around the Capitol. You can't shoot those little microscopic bugs. And next can't do it. I know your myopic leader suggested that we could nuke a hurricane, but the answer isn't just shooting things. It's not. Let's help the men of the... Go ahead.
These are science deniers continuing to deny science. It's that simple.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I don't know how stupid we are. I mean, I really don't. But Michigan illustrated Wednesday that we are the mecca of conservative morons.
We absolutely are.
Yeah. Hey, take the crown from Mississippi. Take it out of the hands of Alabamians. Put it in the hands of Michiganders. Other states had hundreds of people protesting. We had thousands. And like you just said, that was stimulated and promoted by the DeVos clan. They've been doing it for years. Decades of propaganda.
Yeah.
Orwell said, ignorance is strength. And the conservative agenda and the DeVosses, their strength, the fountain that propels them, is the ignorance that Orwell referred to. I never really understood those words when I read them years ago. Ignorance is strength. These idiots are the strength of the conservative agenda. They are the wind beneath Trump's orange wings. Their low IQ, seriously, is the propellant So all the draconian measures of the most sophisticated Wall Street leaders, they get their strength and their wind from these idiots, the ones that were in those streets on Wednesday. They provide the continuance and the support to Wall Street. Mm-hmm. As stupid as they are, sitting in their double wides, they got all they need. Because all they don't care how much money Wall Street makes from the stupidity, as long as they think they got freedom. As long as they believe that they have, as written on their signs down there Wednesday, the right for convenience. It's just not convenient to wait in line to get your Pabst. You want to have the freedom to be stupid, to be dumb. And that's freedom. What Trump has given them. And that is all the trade they need. They'll line up in lines from here to eternity with empty promises of freedom. I'm telling you, Darren, I'm looking for a corner somewhere in the world where this constant day-by-day insanity doesn't come crashing down on your head as soon as you turn the radio on or TV on. Yep. After weeks of it, I am getting fatigued.
You know, Copenhagen, Denmark's starting to sound better and better every single day. They clamp down on the virus immediately. They're lifting restrictions. They're not having issues.
Yeah, I know.
It's unbelievable.
They look at us like we're absolutely out of control, idiotically being led, dangerously being led.
Because we are.
Yeah, I know. They can see it.
Yep. And here's the thing. It's not just the conservatives. Well, actually, it is the conservatives that want to get back to work. Some of those conservatives wear blue. I have this article. This is Patrick Martin writing for the World Socialist website. This is dated April 13th. In an op-ed column posted on the website of the New York Times Sunday to be published in the newspaper's print edition Monday, presumptive Democratic Party presidential nominee Joe Biden aligns himself with the campaign by big business and the Trump administration to force workers to go back to work regardless of the dangers from the coronavirus epidemic. The headline of the column tells the story, Joe Biden, my plan to safely reopen America.
Mm-hmm.
And it just goes on. You folks really need to read it. It's not just the Republicans. It's the Dems. They're one party, the corporate party.
Yeah, that's right. We don't need two parties. Excuse me. We only have one party.
We need a second party.
You don't need three. Yeah, we need a second party. It's like Orwell said. He never said this. The two parties or numerous parties. He just said the party, and that's what we're seeing right now. Unified in their ignorance and their neoliberal objective. And Biden is right there. Has been there all of his life. Why would he change now?
Mm-hmm. I want to read something, Jack. This was something a longtime listener of our show wrote on our Facebook page. It's gone now because that person's gotten banned. Here's what they wrote. This is in response to the story we talked about last week about Biden and some of his alleged sexual proclivities, including skinny dipping when the wife isn't around and stuff like that. By the way, that's all in a great book, and we'll have a link to purchase that book that we're talking about. It's about the stories from Secret Service agents about all sorts of different things. We'll put that on our Facebook page. But we told that story last week, and you posted about it. One of our listeners wrote this, and I'm sure it was directed to me, and I'm going to quote this. So you stay home this election and let Trump and the Republicans continue to destroy the country and us right along with it? You fucking people are retarded. That's a direct quote. You know what my response is? Keep doing your vote shaming and watch what happens. Keep doing your gaslighting and watch what happens. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. You folks need to stop the gaslighting. You need to stop the vote shaming. If Biden wants me to vote for him, he damn well better give me a reason to vote for him. Otherwise, my fat ass is staying home, period. End of story.
Yeah, you have this person's name so that come November the 4th, we can drop in and say, this is what your shoved down our throat candidate did for us?
Absolutely. I'll mention it.
I got a list on my desk. I'm ready.
Yep.
If I'm still alive November the 4th, They're going to hear from me.
I'll will myself to stay alive just to say I told you so.
Well, that's one Yeah, that's one motivation we can use to our advantage.
It'll be like Jim Cornette, the wrestling manager and longtime wrestling promoter. He's going to will himself to stay alive because he hates Vince Russo so much that when Vince Russo dies, he's going to go and urinate on his grave. And Cornette said it best. Hate is a hell of a motivator.
But Darren, that response that you just shared, that was a reaction to the show from last week.
That is correct.
Yeah. Well, so be it.
Yep.
There's really nothing that motivates people like the truth, and that's what we want to share. And I just heard Darren say, if we get nothing back from Biden, and I'm not talking about putting his arm around Bernie, I mean substantive, progressive change in legislation, it ain't going to happen. The progressives will do just what Darren suggested, and that's to stay home. It happened before. They didn't vote in Michigan, 100,000 blank top portions of a ballot. Happened in Florida. They didn't vote for Hillary.
Yeah.
They didn't vote for Trump. They didn't vote. If you don't think it can happen again, you got to wake the hell up.
Yeah.
I don't think Bernie's got a chance of being on the ticket, obviously. But there's a chance that Biden may smell the salts and say, you know what, I've got to actually change from my neoliberal way here. And I mean a real substantive change.
Yeah, but we won't see it because it won't happen. Let me just remind you folks, in Michigan in 2016, there were over 140,000 undervotes on the ballot. These were people that skipped the presidential election and voted down ticket, or they wrote a write-in candidate's name that did not file paperwork with the state of Michigan, because that's the rules. You have to file paperwork to be a write-in candidate. If not, those ballots are counted as spoiled. Across the country...
Yeah, that's the tail of the tape right there.
Across the country, the number was over 1.75 million voters did the same thing. We're not talking
in
about
all the
voters...
wrong spots.
Yep, we're
in
not...
the swing states, in the states that would have made the electoral college tip towards Hillary. The million voters. They weren't sitting in California. They're in New York.
Close to 2
million. They were in Wisconsin, Indiana, Michigan.
I predict it'll be double in 2020.
This time around?
Yes.
Well, here's the trajectory I see from Biden. The sexual charges are gaining real gravitas. Mainstream media now is picking it up.
Finally. Yeah.
And it's timed very, very poorly. Now, this wasn't a concern back before Super Tuesday. It was there. We, as in you and a few other progressives, Jimmy Dort, said, hey, listen, this isn't going to go away. This isn't going to melt. This is going to be there, and it's the one issue that America's voters can get their mind around.
Jack, I want to get back to some more stuff on the coronavirus here. You had mentioned the congressman willing to let more Americans die to save the economy. This is NBC News. Dennis Romero writes this on April 14th. Reopening the economy is preferable to preventing a new wave of coronaviruses. That is according to a member of Congress from Indiana. Representative Trey Hollingsworth, Republican, told radio station WIBC-FM of Indianapolis, Indiana this, quote, it is policymakers' decision to put on our big boy and big girl pants and say it is the lesser of these two evils. It is not zero evil, but it is the lesser of two evils, and we intend to move forward that direction. End of quote. Where have we heard the lesser of two evils before?
Yeah.
Jack, you gotta vote for Biden. We gotta get Trump out of office. He's the lesser of two evils. Jack, in 2016, you were supposed to vote for Hillary to get Trump out of office, or to keep him out of office, because she's the lesser of two evils. Oh, we gotta vote for Obama in 12 to keep Romney out of office, because Obama's the lesser of two evils.
You get two things with that. When you vote for the lesser of two evils, you get evil, and you get less.
Absolutely. You know who said that? Ralph Nader.
Yeah.
And by the way, you can listen to Ralph Nader's show on many Pacifica stations across the country. So, little plug to Ralph Nader. And one thing that I definitely want to play... Oh, real quick, before we get into our next segment, we mentioned this before we started recording. We'll mention it on air real quick. Donald Trump has put together a panel to get the country reopened. And I told you who some of the people were on this panel. The commissioner of Major League Baseball, the commissioner of the NFL, the commissioner of the National Hockey League, Dana White from UFC, and my personal favorite here, might as well play the music. There we go. That is the entrance music for Vince McMahon of World Wrestling Entertainment. Unbelievable.
Yeah. What a group.
Yep.
What a group. And simultaneous, Darren, you had Trump shooting his mouth off. But the WHO, World Health Organization, was dilatory in its warning to the world, okay? And he keeps hanging his hat on supposedly how early he shut down travel from China. This is Trump.
Mm-hmm.
So he blames WHO for their faulty so-called alert, but then he also blows his own trumpet saying he was so prompt in shutting down travel, which was total bull. It's been proven now dogmatically that the virus didn't come even from China. It really came from Europe over here. And even when he shut down supposedly China, there were peripheral avenues. You could go instead to Toronto and fly right straight into Detroit, et cetera, all kinds of. It was absolutely meaningless. But then he threatens, like he always does, to take this money away, take United States funding to the World Health Organization. Yet the health organization responded very quickly and said that the world had been alerted by them, and it's empirical, on January the 5th. Mm-hmm. There were no dilatory actions, but to hide his own malfeasance, he again is blaming somebody else and then taking money away that would actually translate into saving lives and stopping this pandemic.
Jack, let me read this here. This is Dr. Mike Ryan, the executive director of the World Health Organization's Health Emergencies Program. Here's what he said, quote, "In the first weeks of January, the WHO was very, very clear. We alerted the world on January the 5th. Systems around the world, including the U.S., began to activate their incident management systems on January the 6th. And through the next number of weeks, we've produced multiple updates to countries, including briefing multiple governments, multiple scientists around the world on the developing situation. And that is what it was, a developing situation." End of quote. Ryan added this, quote, "The virus was identified on January the 7th. The genetic sequence was shared on the 12th with the world." End of quote. So WHO did their job. Guess who didn't? Donald John Trump.
There's no lie that administration won't use. There's no depth of deception and corruption that they will not go to hide that fact, Darren.
Yeah. So we wanted to give you an update on a story that we told you about at the end of March. We talked to you about Donald Trump sending cease and desist letters to television stations across the country regarding a Super PAC ad. Well, we have an update. This is Jonathan Easley writing for The Hill. This is dated April 13th. Donald Trump's re-election campaign on Monday filed a defamation lawsuit against a Wisconsin television station for running an ad cut by the liberal Super PAC Priorities USA, alleging the president called the coronavirus a hoax. The lawsuit seeks unspecified monetary damages and legal fees from the NBC affiliate WJFW of Rhinelander, accusing the station of having, quote, perpetrated a fraud on the public by recklessly broadcasting defamatory and false advertisement which WJFW NBC knew or should have known was produced through the use of technology that depicted a clearly false statement, end of quote. Jenna Ellis, senior legal advisor to the Trump campaign, said in a statement, quote, It is disappointing that WJFW-NBC would knowingly continue to broadcast this blatantly false ad and perpetrate falsehoods on the American people even after the Trump campaign provided proof in good faith of the ad's falsity. We fully expected the station would recognize their error and immediately cease and desist under their FCC obligations. The Trump campaign is now left with no other option than to use the force of law to ensure these false and defamatory ads cease. Defamation law helps ensure that news outlets are accountable to viewers who should be able to trust the accuracy and truth of content aired to the public. End of quote. And I just tell you what, for those of you that haven't heard it, let me go ahead and play it for you.
The coronavirus.
This is their new hoax.
We have it totally under control. It's one person coming in from China.
One day it's like a miracle, it will disappear.
When you have 15 people, and within a couple of days it's going to be down to close to zero, we really think we've done a great job in keeping it down to a minimum.
I like this stuff. I really get it. People are surprised that I understand it.
No, I don't take responsibility at all.
Priorities USA Action is responsible for the content of this ad.
I don't think the lawsuit's going to go anywhere. His beef is with Priorities USA Political Action Committee, not with the television stations. The television station doesn't have control of the content. So I think his lawsuit's going to get thrown out on its ear. I'm no attorney, but that's just common sense.
Yeah.
But that just shows you how big of an orange asshole Trump really is.
Yeah, I mean, his whole MO, the way he's operated his entire life, it reads like a book without a break.
Yeah.
And so he's going after these companies with a lawsuit. I think I read years ago where he said the key to success was when he got into a fight legally with somebody, he would never give up. He would just never give up. And like any sociopath, that's his MO. And these people that feed off of that and like that give him a platform to stand on. But one quick point, the election that's coming in 2020, many people are hanging their hat on getting rid of Trump at that election, and there's nobody who wants him out worse than Darren Gibson and myself. There's nobody. And because of our motivation to get him out, that's why we stood with the candidate who we thought and still think had the best chance of beating him, and that was the non-corporate Sanders. You may ask us, are we going to vote for Biden to stop Trump? Darren, your answer stands as of this date, the 17th of April. We got to see something from Biden. We're waiting. He wants us to help him. We're asking him to show us something that would win our vote. I'm not going to answer which way I'm vote. I'm not responsible for that. I mean, I don't need to do that. I'm not held to that to tell the world or whoever's listening right now who I'm going to vote for. But I will tell you, Biden's got to come across and give us some real substantive help for the progressives. That's all there is to it.
Absolutely. That's all there is to that one. And I want to get to this since we've been talking about the coronavirus, but in order to do that, we do need to play the appropriate music.
Stop! Hammer time!
Oh, yeah, it's hammer time. It's been a few weeks since we've had a hammer time segment. This is where we drop the hammer on the douchebag of the week. We've got a two-time winner this week, Kristi Noem, the governor of South Dakota. I've got this story. This is Griff Whitty writing for the Washington Post. As governors across the country fell into line in recent weeks, South Dakota's top elected leader stood firm. There would be no statewide order to stay home. Such edicts to combat the spread of the novel coronavirus, Governor Kristi L. Noem said disparagingly, reflected a herd mentality. It was up to individuals, not government, to decide whether to exercise their right to work, to worship and to play, or to even stay at home. And besides, the first-term Republican told reporters at a briefing this month, quote, South Dakota is not New York City, end of quote. But now, South Dakota is home to one of the largest single coronavirus clusters anywhere in the United States. As of this writing on Wednesday, 300 workers were sick at a giant pork processing plant. You know what that number is now, Jack? 700 workers now, out of a total of 3,700 that work for Smithfield Bacon, which, by the way, they're owned by China. So 700
surprise
people out of 3,700 have now gotten sick with the coronavirus at this pork processing plant that they have now shut down because of the coronavirus. That plant is responsible for 5% of the pork produced in this country.
Yeah, throw your bacon away, folks.
And yet you've got Kristi Noem, the governor of South Dakota, saying, oh, it should be up to individuals. We can't control anything with the government. We shouldn't control anything with the government. People just need to be free. Freedom. They're free to be dumb.
Yeah. Big, juicy conservative. That's the thinking.
So to Kristi Noem for basically putting the lives of everybody in South Dakota in danger, we've got this message for you.
Don't be a douchebag.
That's right. This is the second time you've won this award, Kristi. You need to stop being a douchebag. Unbelievable.
Wow. Yeah,
Idiot.
those red states out there. North Dakota, South Dakota, Montana, Wyoming.
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
It is. What do they all have in common? Republican governors.
Haven't got the brains God gave green apples, my grandmother used to say.
Yep. And I want to end this week with this story. This is Lee Brown writing for the New York Post, dated April 13th. He practiced what he preached, then he died of coronavirus. An evangelical pastor died of COVID-19 just weeks after proudly showing off how packed his Virginia church was and vowing to keep preaching, quote, unless I'm in jail or the hospital, end of quote. In his last known in-person service on March 22nd, Bishop Gerald O. Glenn got his congregation at Richmond's New Deliverance Evangelistic Church to stand to prove how many were there despite warnings against gatherings of more than 10 people. He said this, quote, I firmly believe that God is larger than this dreaded virus. You can quote me on that. End of quote.
Folks, where was God? Why didn't God save this guy? If he was espousing the truth and helping the kingdom of God right now, wouldn't we need him? Where's the logic in that?
This guy
is a God that's omnipotent. Why would he allow this guy to die and drown in his own saliva? Why did he do that?
Happily announcing he was being controversial by being in violation of safety protocols with way more than 10 people at the church, he vowed to keep his church open, quote, unless I'm in jail or the hospital. Then he said this, quote, I am essential. I'm a preacher. I talk to God, end of quote.
If you say so.
Yeah. On Sunday...
and our stimulus bill is paying these turkeys.
Yeah. On Sunday, his church announced, quote, with an exceedingly sorrowful and heavy heart, end of quote, that the pastor had died a week after being diagnosed with COVID-19. His wife, Marcicia Glenn, is also sick with the bug, with church members offering their prayers, and I'm sure I'm butchering her first name. I don't care. Their daughter, Margery Crawley, told WTVR television that her father initially dismissed his symptoms because he has a condition that often leads to fevers and infections. She's now encouraging everyone to stay home. She told WTVR, quote, it becomes very real to you. I just beg people to understand the severity and the seriousness of this because people are saying it's not just about us, it's about everyone around us, end of quote.
And add your husband was full of bullshit, if you would, man, please.
Well, no, it's her father.
Her father, even worse.
Yep, too little, too late. And speaking of late, we got to get out of here. We'll be back next week, folks. I'm Darren Gibson.
I am Jack Prince.
For Kristen Cook, please support independent media and the First Amendment, and please be safe out there.
The stations that carry Southpaws do not necessarily share the opinions expressed on the show. Southpaws is protected by the First Amendment to the U.S. Constitution and is copyrighted by Big D Entertainment. All rights reserved.